Congratulations on the nomination.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Tell me what you felt emotionally when that nomination came through, when you found out.
Oh, emotionally, it was just a surprise because you don't know what's going to happen. And emotionally, I just have to say, after doing this acting gig for 30, 35, almost 40 years, including Chicago, you don't expect too much after all this time. But when that happened, it was very gratifying and just a big lift. I feel like the Academy's added 20 years to my life.
I want to talk about some of those early days in Chicago. You were raised there by two parents who were deaf. At what point did you realize that your upbringing was different than the other kids in the neighborhood?
Wow, what a great question. Right away. Right away. You have to realize in the 50s, where I grew up in Humboldt Park in Chicago, there was no captioning for television, no devices that we used to text each other, uh, things that make it a lot easier for the deaf community. So I was the go-between, when my father needed to negotiate a contract with, whether it be our mortgage or my mother dealing with the gas company. Please don't turn off the juice because we'll pay it next week. I'm a little kid, less than 7 years old, and negotiating between the hearing man and my deaf parents. So, and at that time also, there was a lot of, I remember walking down the street with them or being on a bus in Chicago and kids making fun of them, the way they sounded, the way they talked. That sounds so strange, but it's not that way anymore in these days for kids that have deaf parents. But yeah, people were kind of cruel. Kids were very cruel. And there were a lot of things, even on parent teacher night, I have to go to my teacher conference with my parents, and there's no sign language interpreter. The profession wasn't even invented at the time. So I'm negotiating between my teachers and my parents. Paul, I could say anything I wanted. Paul's doing great. Everything's fine, and everybody's, so you learn to be a little bit manipulated also as a little kid. But yeah, I knew right away that I was the between the hearing world and the deaf world. And, my father wasn't too pleased with having to be put in that position and always having to go to the hearing guy for a job or for this or for that, for a favor. And he was very distrustful of the hearing community. And so as a young boy, so was I. My father's opinions and the way he felt about people rubbed off on me. So I had to talk with a hearing guy who's negotiating and telling me, don't interpret this for your father. This is just between you and me. And I'm like, hey, F you. I'm going to interpret everything for my dad. So it was that kind of thing. It's it really affected me. I have to say that.
It's also quite a responsibility for a child.
It seems to be, yes, because you don't want to have any screw ups. I remember one time my mother and father put down some earnest money on a house on the north side of Chicago. And then I don't remember the details, but it got all messed up. And we had to go back to that house and get that money back. And I had to do that negotiation. And my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, we talk about that situation today. He goes, boy, I was so glad you had to go and not me, because that seemed like an adult situation. And a lot of conversations I've kind of forgotten now on purpose because they're so scary. Just such a daunting experience. We have to go back and get this X amount of dollars back because we need it. We need the money. And so it's not a situation that children should be put into. And thank God now we are in 2021. And there is a sign language profession where you can get an interpreter who is a professional to go in with you and negotiate this and so people can talk to you on an equal basis.
Is that pressure, that responsibility that you tell me about, part of the reason that you joined the military?
Well, yeah, I was drafted in 1969. I was actually drafted into the Army.
Right.
And at the time, I was deathly afraid of going into a jungle. I had these nightmares of losing my legs. because so many boys are coming back in body bags every night on the news. You probably don't remember that, but every night on the news, and going up to in high school, I graduated from high school in '66, but every night body bags and the body count. So when I got drafted in '69, I was already 21 years old at that time. My drummer and I at the time went down the street to the naval office and realized we could exchange 2 years in the Army. We could do 4 years in the Navy and be on a ship. And the recruiting guy guaranteed me, said, "Oh, you'll be on a ship. No, you won't be losing your legs there." I didn't know how to swim, but that didn't matter to me. So I joined the Navy for 4 years, and that's how that went down. But I do remember coming home, telling my mother that I joined the Navy, and she hit the roof. She exploded with anger. "What are we going to do now?" she says. And I remember thinking to myself, Tom, well, you're going to have to get by without me because I am done. I'm tired of this responsibility. And when I left, the cab was out front of the house, and I looked at my younger brother, Don, who's 2 years younger than I, and I just said, "It's all yours now, Don." And he, with tears in his eyes, he says, "Okay, Paul, good luck."
And when you got back, they were still there.
They were still there. And my mother at the time, now it's 1973, I'm back, I'm in one piece. And I had already gotten married while I was in the Navy. This is just a crazy story, but my mother's telling me about, there's a new thing happening now. It's called sign language interpreting. It's a profession, and you could do this. And I'm thinking to myself, that's what I did my whole life. I don't want to do this. So I took a job as driving a 2.5-ton truck, delivering Jack Daniel's whiskey all around Chicago. I would be schlepping, on what do you call those things? I put 5 cases on top of each other, lift it up, go down these stairs to a restaurant to deliver Jack Daniel's and wine. But I would do anything to not do the interpreting thing. Then a woman who was running an agency contacted me. She said, "There's a young deaf man here in Chicago. He wants to go to electronics school to become an electrician, and they will pay you money to help him get through this school, to facilitate the communication between the teaching." Anyway, I thought, well, that intrigues me, because I was a little bit sore from delivering all these boxes of liquor.
Yeah.
It was not for me. I'm 5'6", 125 pounds at the time.
Yeah.
So I take the job, and turns out this guy that I was interpreting for was number 1 in his class at electronics school. Number 1. All he needed was an interpreter. That's all he needed. He aced everything. He kicked everybody's ass in that class. All the hearing guys that were in the class with him respected him so much, loved him so much. And here we are 40 years later, and he's already retired. He raised a family, had a great living as an electrician in Chicago. And when that was accomplished, I thought, wow, well, that wasn't too bad. I could do this. So I started.
Did it make you appreciate the role you had with your parents that perhaps you hadn't appreciated in the same way before?
Oh, of course. I didn't realize, you're a kid, you're so ignorant.
Yeah.
And you're so cruel, and it's all about me, I guess that hasn't changed, but it's all about you, and so when I went through that experience with this young guy, I thought, wow, this is, I felt good about myself. I felt like I was doing so. It wasn't the money. It was that he was so happy, and he had developed this self-esteem, which he already had. But at that point, to turn out to be number 1 in your class and to get special recognition for it. And the teacher, I remember at the time, was so thrilled that he was able to communicate with this guy. So yes, it gave me a newfound appreciation. And then I started studying so that I could be certified and become a professional. And then I realized that these people weren't messing around. This wasn't like doing it for your family. This was a job that you could be proud of. This is something that you could, and then I ended up having a career. My niche happened to be legal interpreting. So I fell into that, and I've been interpreting in courtrooms in Illinois and California for the past 35 years as a certified sign language interpreter with a legal certificate. And so that, to me, I mean, I've done that. I've done deaf jurors. I go into the deliberation room with deaf jurors. I've done murder trials. I've done traffic tickets. I've done divorces. I've done adoptions. What a fulfilling career I've had as a sign language interpreter. Absolutely.
I'm interested in how the connection, the reason I wanted to tell some of the story is not just because it's a fascinating and very moving story, but also I'm really interested in how one part of your life leads to the other part of your life. And we had the director of The Sound of Metal, Darius Marder, on a little while ago, and he said something interesting. I'd like for you to hear. Take a listen to this.
Sure, sure.
What's amazing about ASL is that 50% of the language is in your face. And you have to get comfortable with expressing, with actually externalizing emotion, which is really the opposite of what we do as hearing people, I would say, especially in Western culture.
Do you think that your experience with ASL has made you a better actor?
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that I gained an appreciation for the acting profession as a young boy, because my very first experience when I thought, wow, was in 1956. I'm about 8 years old then. My mother, who was cut off from pop culture, she says, I want to go watch this Elvis Presley movie, Love Me Tender. It's a Western with this guy. This guy was making all this noise on Ed Sullivan. And I liked Ed Sullivan. I mean, I liked Elvis. I loved what he was doing. So I said, okay. So we walked about a block and a half down from our house where there was a little theater, movie theater called the Vision Theater. And we go in. This is my first experience watching an adult movie with my mom sitting next to me. And I quickly realized there was no access for her to see what they were talking about. So I had to crane my neck and interpret every character, Richard Egan, Deborah Pageant, Elvis Presley, the whole Civil War story. And I'm interpreting for her what this guy's saying, what that guy's saying. And she's just loving it. At one point, oh God, I mean, that's when I thought to myself on the way home, I was just doing every part in this movie. I was acting. I was conveying the message through to my mother. Wow, that was. And then later on, my father's watching Bonanza or The Fugitive. And I said to my dad, I said, what do you think this story's about? He goes, I don't know. I'm just making it up in my head. I said, I can't take this. I can't take it. So I sat down and I'm interpreting Hoss and Little Joe and Hop Sing, the cook. I'm doing all these characters for my dad. And he's going, wow, this is great. Yeah, I mean, so then I really realized that I had some kind of affinity to portraying all these characters. And then I started doing rock and roll because I loved the Beatles. My mother bought me my first tickets to go see the Beatles at Comiskey Park in Chicago, on the one condition that when I got home, I'd have to tell her how the whole experience was.
Yeah, it seems like it was important to your mom that you experience these things. You said you said something interesting. You said she was so cut off from pop culture. It seems like It was important for her that you not be.
Yes, because she was herself. She lost her hearing at the age of 5. And the next time you see a 5-year-old child, you realize how that can impact the life. She already had acquired language, already knew about music. She remembered going to or hearing Frank Sinatra way back when she was a kid, trying to access that communication. And so she's the one who bought me my first guitar. She's the one who got me Beatle tickets. She's the one who encouraged me to do whatever I could in the arts. So my father lost his hearing at the age of 6 months, so he did not remember any kind of music or anything. So it didn't matter to him. He just was very happy and peaceful the way he was. My mother, on the other hand, a little bit bitter. And you could just tell the older she got, the more she missed it. But when I was a young man and she was still young herself, she was very excited about the projects I was in. She'd sneak into rock and roll clubs. When I was in a David Bowie band in Chicago. I look back at the bar. I'm on stage, half naked, performing this.
Were you Bowie? Were you Ziggy?
I used to do Bowie. I did Ted Nugent, Aerosmith. And my mother was my seamstress. She made my outfits, like a zipper that goes from my navel up to my neck. But when my mother wasn't around, I'd take that zipper and just zip it all the way down and be Mr. Sexy, right? So I look in the back of the bar. There she is watching me going, hey, zip it up, buddy, or I'm not, zip it up. while she's drinking her 7-7, you know. So she snuck into the bar that night. She did that many times.
I bet she'd be some proud of you.
She would. I know that they both would. My mother, when I was doing stage acting in Chicago, would come to see any show that I was in, and there was no access to communication. There was no sign language interpreting, but she'd just sit there in the front row and just try and read lips of every character on the play that I was doing. And my father would just, out of respect, couldn't read lips, but he'd just sit there and watch me, just to watch his son.
And now you're nominated for an Oscar, man. Like,
oh my God, it's just too beautiful.
Go ahead.
No, it's unbelievable. It's emotional. It's gratifying after the years and years and years that I put into this profession. And you know, I've always been a sign language interpreter in the court system, and running out to do an audition so I could do one line in a movie or two lines in a TV show, or get ready to do a full-length play like of Mice and Men at Deaf West Theater, but never got the opportunity to be in a room and speak with somebody that might be able to give me a part that meant something, some meat, you know.
Right, and so let me understand something about the Sound of Metal, right? Because Darius Marder, this was a role that was, I think, attracting the interest of some pretty big A-list actors. And what convinced him to give the role to you? No disrespect to you, but what convinced him to give the role to you?
Well, my audition tape. I mean, he was always looking for somebody within the community to do Joe. And Joe, the role of Joe was not written for a deaf actor. So a culturally deaf actor could not do the role because he's a late deafened individual. And I think he wanted to parallel the drummer Ruben's experience of being a late deafened person. These are people that are basically ignored by the deaf community because they look at them as hearing people. They don't sign. They're not, they don't have access to their families, their hearing families. They can't join the deaf community because they're not culturally deaf and don't speak sign language. So he was looking for that. And I think people were suggesting names to him, but he resisted it. And then, you know, as time gets closer to the deadline of shooting, he starts entertaining, well, maybe we can get somebody in here that can learn sign language. But when I guess the story is when I put my audition tape down with my scene partner here in LA, we sent it in, and my wife, who is my agent, calls the casting director and says, hey, have you seen Paul's tape? And they go, you know what, at this point, the word is out there. We've had so many tapes come in from people that know a little bit of sign language. We're inundated. I think they're probably going to go with a name. So, and my wife goes, please, just look at the tape. You got to look at the tape. Well, if we can find it, we will. 10 minutes later, the phone rings, and it's the casting director saying, you know what? Darius has seen the tape. He wants to talk to Paul. Look, my audition tape was so full of emotion, just from what I know about deaf culture and the deaf community and what this guy's about, that I knew what to do. And was I going to hold my breath though, Tom? No, yeah. I wasn't going to hold my breath because that's my story. When I do an audition, I take the script and then I throw it in the garbage because, you know, I know they don't want me. I just keep on going. I put my head down, put one foot in front of the other, and keep on doing what I got to do next. But as it turns out, he calls.
It's a beautiful story. Let's take a listen to a clip from the film.
Let's talk about me. I'm an alcoholic. I lost my hearing in the Vietnam War when a bomb exploded near me. I still remember the music I was listening to when that bomb went off. After that, I lost everything else. My wife, my kid. Not because of being deaf, mind you, Ruben. It was the beer.
If you're just tuning in, my name is Tom Power. You're listening to Q. I'm speaking with actor Paul Raci about his role in the film Sound of Metal, which has earned him his very first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the age of 73. Are you laughing because
I love it?
It seems improbable? Is that why you're laughing?
I just love it. I want it to be an inspiration to anybody. I really do.
Well, it's an interesting line, and we played that clip on purpose.
Yes.
And I want to say, I don't think it's improbable because of your performance. I know, it's been a long road for you here, and it's a really incredible performance. But we chose that clip on purpose because he said it wasn't the deafness, it was the beer. And your character Joe is Ruben's mentor, and Ruben is a drummer in a heavy metal band who's going deaf, but he's also a recovering addict. And why was that important to you in telling this story? The addiction side of it.
Well, again, as we were talking about me reading the script, I'm looking at all these addiction things. I went to Vietnam. When I got back, it wasn't pretty. I had developed some pretty nasty addictions that I had to work through. So I'm reading this. It's a deaf sober house. Which is such a great idea because there is a deaf sober house in Los Angeles called Awakenings, deaf owned, deaf run, deaf counselors, so that deaf addicts can get a leg up on everybody. Yeah. So that resonated with me right there, the addiction. I've heard the story so many times. I've interpreted so many AA meetings. I've run a deaf ministry in Los Angeles. I've run a deaf addiction ministry in Los Angeles. I've been there. I've met so many Joes throughout all of these different meetings that I've attended and interpreted for. So, God, I just felt so familiar to me. And the other thing, if I might, is Darius was such a great, loving director. He let us improv now and then. When Joe says to him, I still remember the music that was playing before the bomb went off. That's an improv line that I threw in there. That my mother, that's from my mom, she still remembered after all those years. And I remember one time sitting on her lap in a rocker, and she's rocking, and she's starting to sing a song that she thought she remembered from when she was a little girl. And the song is I'll Get By as long as I have you. It's one of those old schmaltzy songs, Yeah. And she's starting to sing it to me, and I'm listening. I had a pretty good ear. I look up at her and I go, Ma, that's not how the song goes. And I'll never forget the look of pain in her eyes. She looked at me and she says, oh, I guess I don't remember. But she couldn't hear herself. And as I said, kids are pretty cruel, but I was so bluntly honest. Ma, boy, but I'll tell you, to this day, it haunts me because it hurt her feelings so bad that she couldn't sing anymore.
Yeah, she had that last memory,
Yes. So that all that stuff lives with me, and I threw it in there as an improv, and there's quite a few improvisations in the movie that Darius was open to. So beautiful moment.
How has Hollywood failed the deaf community?
Well, by just ignoring them or writing them off. I don't know what they're thinking, but hopefully they can open their eyes a little bit. Look, in 1948, Jane Wyman won the Academy Award for playing a deaf woman in Johnny Belinda. Mia Farrow recreated the role in the 60s. Yeah. And all throughout the years, there have been times when hearing actors are cast as deaf people. Now, that's a major sin right there, because if you knew what I know, and what we all know in the deaf community, there are deaf actors, men and women, who are highly, highly skilled, highly intuitive, highly intelligent, that are not given a chance for many reasons. But they're tired of it. They're sick of it. And the latest one being Wonderstruck with Julianne Moore. She plays, as the character is a young woman, they got a deaf actor to do that part. Beautiful. And then when she grows up to be Julianne Moore does this sign production off her body and hands and face that to us is not authentic. I'm so sorry. Yeah. And if you're deaf, if you're a coda, such as I am, a child of deaf adults, you look up at the screen and you go, boy, this is not working. This is not the way it goes. I don't care what kind of a ASL coach you had in your training here. It's not authentic. So they're tired of it. And what I'm going to make sure happens, if I have anything to say about it, now that people are like listening, excellent. We need to see more protagonists that just happen to be deaf, because there are great actors out there. I could name off tons of them that deserve a shot. And if you're going to have a deaf character, then it should be authentically portrayed with a deaf actor?
I've had a grand time talking to you about Sound of Metal, but
Are we done? Oh
no,
no,
we're not done.
Go, man.
Your fingers are still crossed, I'm sure, but no, you're not done yet.
No.
I'm only joking. You're part of the Deaf West Theater in Los Angeles, where actors perform using sign language, and then there's this project. That is Paul Raci performing Symptom of the Universe with his Black Sabbath tribute band, Hands of Doom, for which he not only sings, but also provides sign language interpretation as he's singing. Where did you get the idea for an ASL Black Sabbath tribute band?
Well, I always did music for my mom way back then, but when I got the itch to sing again, because I'd stopped doing it for a while, partly because of the drug world that I was in, and I made a transitioning to acting. That doesn't stop you getting drugs. I don't know what I was thinking, but I made that transition. And then when I moved out here after many years, I thought, God, I want to sing again. I want to perform. So I auditioned for this Black Sabbath tribute band. One day we decided to do one song. I said, well, let's just do this for the hell of it. And the guys are going, okay, whatever. So we did Tomorrow's Dream and put it out on the internet, and it went viral. And then the band, these three guys, they come up to me and they say, hey, this is cool. We got something here. Can you do the whole show in sign language? And I'm like, geez, that's a lot of work. But I took a deep breath and I thought, wait a minute, I can do this. And so that's what we do now. And God, we're in these heavy metal headbanging bars out in Southern California, like Petey's and Tarzana. And, we have every gig, we get like 30 to 40 deaf people that show up, pay their money, get in the club from the ages of 21 to 60. I shit you not. They come in and they love it. Black Sabbath, the lyrics, very prolific. War, the devil, God, nuclear destruction. And you get to do all this stuff in the mosaic of American Sign Language while I'm singing it with a headset on. And so that clip, Symptom of the Universe, perfect for sign language. Perfect. So, and as a matter of fact, our first gig after this pandemic is this Saturday in San Bernardino. We're playing a club, the Marquee Bar. And I've already got deaf people blowing my phone. I'm going, we're all coming. We're bringing our masks. We're all vaccinated. We're coming. So deaf people, I think it's weird because you see hearing guys in the club going, what are these deaf people doing here? Well, deafness is not a monolith. There's different degrees of deafness, different levels of it. Some have no hearing. Some have a little bit of hearing. Some are like my mom. So it is tremendously successful. There's 15 Black Sabbath bands here in Los Angeles, Tom. 15. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them, yeah. But we got a big following, and some of these hearing headbangers, they come up to me, they go, the best part of the show is watching the deaf audience watching you and you interacting with them. This is crazy. So it's thrilling. It's hilarious.
Can you forgive my ignorance for a second? And because if I'm not mistaken, like the devil horn symbol that you'll see at a lot of Black Sabbath shows, like that one,
yeah.
That's a meaningful sign, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Nah, in sign language, the old sign for bullshit used to be this.
Right.
Now they do some other sign, but no, this is the one you're thinking about. I love you.
Oh, this one here. Right.
Right. That's I love you. Then there's the L and then the Y, and you put them all together, and it's I love you. So that's why our logo for Hands of Doom is, rock on, I love you. That's how we do it like that.
Right. And when you're looking into the crowd and like people are doing this, it's very meaningful to you. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. No, it's so much fun. I can't even believe I didn't think of this years ago.
and it makes me think about your mom. It makes me think about her love of music and
my mom, God, I wish you could see it. I hope she's looking at it now, but yeah. it's some of these songs that we do, geez, they're just so meaningful. And when I do them in sign language, the look in a deaf audience member's eyes that's everything to me. It's everything.
Well, I'm glad that as things get bigger for you, and I was reading that, things are heating up and, there's more offers coming in, and I'm glad you still got time to play music and do the things that are meaningful to you.
Man, how wonderful can life be? I mean, I'm thrilled. I'm glad too. It's wonderful.
It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Tom, now we're done, huh?
Now
you're an absolute pleasure, man.
It's a joy to talk to you as well. My conversation with actor Paul Raci, who stars in The Sound of Metal. Paul's performance in that film has earned him his first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. We'll find out if he wins on April 25th. Paul, what a joy. Thank you so much.
A lot of fun, man.